So I decided to look at reference images, well, reference videos for different types of movement. Where I got these from are nice as they have the frames counter to give you a nice idea of how many frames each part of the animation should take, which really helped kind of make my animation smoother eventually when we get to that stage. But I chose to go with an angry walk and a kick at the end with a roll back to the start for my model to return and loop. So I started off with this model and just removed anything to do with rigging. And from there, I created a new rig. So I started off adding the main character. I got a little confused because I keep forgetting I have to click on the character to then add them. So I started off just with the standard guide settings to create the guide. From here, I just adjusted each of the guide points just so that they were more precise to where I wanted them, as they were a little low on the wrist and forearm and the shoulder. Most of the other points were reasonably okay, so I think I just adjusted them ever so slightly just to sort of make it a little bit tighter on the joins. Once I was happy with the guides, I selected the one side so that I could copy these straight across to the other side. Saved me a lot of time of having to adjust them and making sure they were more precise. Next, I updated the skeleton just to see if that would all line up nicely. So on creating that, it all looked reasonably accurate to where I wanted them. I may have moved the waist up a little bit more if I was to go back and look at this again, as I realised afterwards it looked a little bit low, but it all worked out in the end. From there, I created the sort of generic skin weight and just allowed it to create it itself. So the default skin was reasonably okay with some of the sort of areas that weren't quite good where, well, I made the mistake of forgetting to click on the waist and I don't know what I actually selected. So the belly hung out and I thought I'd made a major mistake, but it just turned out I hadn't clicked on the waist. But the skin weighting was very good except for two main areas, that being under the arms and the hands. So under the arms would pull out sort of the armor and sort of under the arm area and give them almost like a Spider-Man gliding web under the arms. Also, the hand would weirdly skew and shrink. So I knew these were some of the main areas I'd have to look at with the skin weighting. So looking at the skin weighting, I just quickly checked down the list to the right hand, as I knew I would have to bulk this out just to stop that from stretching and skewing. So I just gave that a very heavy-handed weighting to it. It was during this process I actually found out you could hold control to actually remove weightings at the same time, which saved me some time, as originally I was taking the value and setting it to 0 every time just to delete parts of weighting I'd maybe put in by mistake. So that was a bit nice to find out. And from that weighting, the hand no longer goes weird. And I was just checking just to make sure that the forearm wouldn't be too affected by the hand's changes when grabbing the whole thing, and seeing if it moved the hand, the forearm, and the upper arm. Next, I just moved on to the forearm and then followed up on the upper arm. One of the major issues that I came across was with this model, it's actually clothing on top, and it didn't have an easy way to remove the clothing to put weight paints underneath it. So if I was to get a model in future, I'd maybe see one that separates the armor and clothing separately, which is easier to take off and attach. As when I was going through this, I realized that when I was doing the upper arm, parts of that were skin weighted under the elbow pad, which then stretched that out. But in the end, I kept most of the default and just touched up ever so slightly just to stop that from happening. So after doing the skin weighting on the forearm, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't messing the hand up anymore, so I was quite happy with that. I did actually look at other skinning software, well, plugins, which is NG Skins, but I found that that could really mess with the model. But what I did like it for was when you moved it across, sort of copied one side of the skin to the other, it would actually show you in different colors, different areas, which made it easier to see that it had copied across happily. So as I moved on to the animations, one of the biggest things that I kept forgetting to do was advance the timeline before doing my animations. So I did have to come back to some of the animations and redo them again, as I hadn't advanced the timeline to do the next sort of keyframe along. Some of the issues I had was the just trying to work out on the rotations, especially around about the feet when you do more than just little movements. So in the animations, I have the character completely turn around, so I was having to adjust the hip rotation and trying to get that back so it didn't look really bizarre with skinny kind of backwards chicken walking legs. But I got there in the end. It's just one of those things that kind of slowed me down, as it was like you had to rotate on the X, then the Y, then the Z, and then possibly have to go back, especially around the feet as well. That's that was one of my biggest bugbears, was the feet whenever I had to rotate them in more than just the up and down. So as I'm going through the animations, I'm actually looking at my reference videos as well. So I'm getting the rough frames I'm just putting in, just blocking them in as much as I need. I was working these out in a calculator just to make sure that I was getting the right amount of frames, as obviously I wasn't starting the videos on 0 frames, I was starting them further on, so I was having to adjust those just to get where the feet placement were, where the arms were, where the body was. But the reference video really helped. I mean, there's reference pictures, but I don't feel they do the movement justice, as those are the static keyframes and you can't really see them in motion unless there's an animation for them as well. But the actual keyframes from the videos really helped. So for a lot of the animation, I was just trying to keep the body more kind of natural and relaxed. My first few sort of keyframes weren't quite as good. I've left them in just to show that I improved from that first keyframe, where I don't think I got the where each part of the body should have been from the start. So it's very kind of, it jerks at the start, but then it gets really smooth. Um, so we'll see that from the final animation. I was going to go back and change it to make it a lot smoother at the start, but I thought I'll leave that in there as it shows that I had that issue and I was looking sort of show it improve as I went along. I also did try to add in some sort of head movements or waist movements, so it's kind of more of a swagger angry walk than just an angry walk. Also realised just to go back and forward and look at the different animations as well as I was progressing, as opposed to just, oh, it'll be fine. I had one instant where the arm clipped through the body, so I had to completely go back and take that animation out and just redo that one again. Also did make the mistake of initially doing the sort of different animations just on this perspective screen. I did eventually add on the second screen so I could see where sort of the ground would be, so the feet were landing in the same area. I did do this after sort of initially doing it all from this and realised that some of the feet locations kind of floated above. I think this also was the cause of the jerky animation at the start. So again, if I was to start this all over again, I would have the two screens where I can see where the feet are in relation to the ground. So the final animation, as I said, the first sort of couple of steps are a bit jerky, and then it gets a little bit better. I'd maybe have slowed down the kick at that point, as it was. I wanted it to be quick, but I think when I'd done it, it was just a little bit too quick.